uh, division of the defense systems sector in Northrop Grumman. Been with Northrop. It was 18 years in July. Prior to that, I had a nice long career as a recruiter and recruiting supervisor with the Army National Guard. So I've been doing this HR stuff for about next week. It'll be 43 years.
Holy smokes, man, that's a lot of experience. What? So you were active duty at some point, or were you just National Guard, sir?
I was AGR, so I had the best of both worlds.
There you go. How does some of that relate to transitioning and staying active in the community between both, active and reserve, components and stuff like that?
Well, it was a very easy transition for me because when the old saying is that when you're a recruiter 24/7. You're always recruiting for something, whether it's the military or corporate America. And so I was very lucky that because of my military background, when I went to work for Northrop Grumman, that of course they assigned me military programs, and I was able to use my connections from being AGR and active duty and the military community to keep those contracts full of personnel.
Nice. What are you saying? What would be a good a point to make about when you're doing your transition, no matter how big of a transition you're making? What is some of the stuff that you learned from that?
Well, and I used to go to Fort Leavenworth quite a bit because I live in the Kansas City area and sit on the employer panels and do the career fairs and have discussions with transitioning service members. And so, the great thing about that is you build those relationships with the SkillBridge managers, with the TAP coordinators and Department of Labor. You just build your network, and you continue to grow your network. And, one of my favorite things to tell military folks transitioning about their resume was, find others that have been in similar backgrounds, see how they've tailored their resume. And then plagiarism is acceptable in resume writing. If somebody has a resume that done similar things and the wording in that resume is better than what you can think of, then steal it. It's okay. As long as you have those skill sets and that background, make it look good. That's what the resume paints a picture of you because you want to get by the gatekeepers, which are people like me in recruiting. If you don't get past us, you're not going to get an interview. So you've got to network with those people. You've got to have an attractive resume. It's like one time you see a lot of objectives on resumes. That used to be the thing. And it's like, why waste the real estate on a resume with an objective? Your objective is to get a new job in a career field that is going to take you where you want to go. So don't bother telling me that. I know that. Most people do. Use that to summarize what you're going to bring to the table, you know, and have a good functional resume. You don't have to use military jargon, civilianize it, bring it to the forefront. Don't put things in there that don't reflect your skill set and experience and all that stuff. But you can change the wording, you know, uh, for military people transitioning, project management, or, that is a skill set that every service member has. Now, you may not have a PMP certification, but you've managed projects. The military doesn't call them projects, they call it a mission, right? So that mission is a project. So you've managed that in whatever leadership level you may or may not be in the military. So, just look at other resumes, do what uh, you feel needs to be in there to get past the gatekeeper to get an interview. And then, that situation, task, action, result, the star, when you get the interview, that's all important.
So would you say that there's certain words that you're looking for aside from like mission oriented, which is something that you see a lot from military people? And is there some wording that you're looking at that's gonna make you stop and read it?
Oh, one of the first things I look at is because on my particular program that I support, the Sentinel program, an active DoD secret clearance is a requirement. So that's one of the first things I look at when I look at candidates is to make sure they still have a clearance. And then if a degree is required, which a lot of times it'll state that you need a degree. If it's a STEM degree, then that's really important. But if it's just a degree or experience in lieu of a degree, then you start looking at how many years of experience do they have so that we can use the in lieu of based on the level. Northrop Grumman is very meticulous in putting in basic qualifications. And so that's one of the first things we look for is to ensure that our candidate meets the basic qualifications. If it says that you've got to have a bachelor's degree and 5 years of experience or experience in lieu of, then you need to have 9 years of experience documented on your resume. A big mistake that people make is they don't have a long enough resume to cover the years of experience that are required for that particular job level. If you're applying for like a senior principal, which is a level 4, or a staff level, which is a level 5, the experience levels on those are what, 8 years and 12 years. So a lot of people say, oh, well, don't go beyond 7 years on your resume. Well, how the heck can I verify that you have 12 years if you didn't include that in your resume? So the basic qualifications on any job description should tell you, do I need a 1-page resume or do I need a 2-page or even a 3-page? And most candidate tracking systems will allow you to list, you can put in a short resume and you can put in a CV. So it just depends. Another big question that I get asked a lot is, what about cover letters? Personally, in 18 years with Northrop Grumman, I've probably read 25 cover letters. And that's because I saw it there and I thought, oh, well, I've got a few minutes. I'll read the cover letter. But pay attention to detail when you do a cover letter. If your cover letter says, "Dear Lockheed Martin representative," and I'm looking at it, I'm going to say, "What? They didn't care enough to change the verbiage and say, Dear Northrop Grumman." Okay, so it's just little things that can set you apart from somebody else.
So with all the experience that you've had dealing with recruiting and what would you say is some of the most successful things you've seen when it comes to moving forward past the resume part when you're getting in the door with one of these people? How does it look from there?
Well, I would recommend that, which when you go through TAP class, they have mock interviews. And when you've been in the military for 10, 15, 20 years, 25 years, you really didn't have much of an opportunity to do a behavioral based or technical based interview. So you need to brush up on those skills. And then another thing about the interview, so after COVID, more and more companies got away from face-to-face interviews. I would say 99% of the interviews that I have scheduled in the last 5 years have been phone interviews. So what do you need to do to prepare for a phone interview? Send your spouse, your children, your pets out of the house when you're doing the phone interview. Have a nice quiet place. You don't have to be on camera, but if you are on camera, sometimes managers can do that. If our manager's in a secure facility, they don't have cameras. So the phone interview is going to be the phone interview. You just want to, as the interviewee, you want to limit your uh, potential issues of interruptions. And, you know, nobody's watching you. You can have a cheat sheet there, you know. Uh, you don't want to take too long to answer. And if you don't understand the question, it's okay to ask them to repeat the question, And when they ask you a technical question, try to brush up on anything technical that you're going to be asked so that you know what you're talking about. If there's a particular acronym as part of the BQs, you've got to be able to talk about that to somebody that is probably a subject matter expert in that area, you know. So it's just preparation more than anything. Once you get the interview, that's your opportunity to convince them that you bring added value and you can do the job probably better than anybody else they're going to interview.
Well, I mean, and that's absolutely right. Just setting it up for yourself. So when these transitioning service members are going to look at a job at Northrop Grumman, how are they going to be able to do that? Is there a way for them to access the page? Or are they coming to talk? Or are you talking to them directly? Like how are they going to get a job at Northrop Grumman?
Well, I would, within our system, which we've started using a little bit of the AI to help the candidates. Uh, you can attach a resume and it'll show you jobs that you should look at. And then you can go in there before you actually apply and you can look at that job description. You can make sure that you've tweaked your resume uh, to fit the BQs. And the more PQs or preferred qualifications that you have, then that increases your likelihood of getting a call from one of our sourcers or from the recruiter to find out, okay, are you willing to move? What are your salary demands? And different things like that. And then from there, then we'll get you scheduled for an interview. Then it's your opportunity to, really get down to the nitty gritty and have a technical conversation. I recruit a lot of software engineers, and it's amazing because I'm not an engineer. I can barely spell engineer, okay? Except I was a combat engineer, so it really doesn't count. But I don't have the technical software knowledge to have an in-depth conversation, but I know how to find them. I'm a pretty good hunter when it comes to finding those folks. But to have a technical conversation, most of the recruiters, they really can't do that. We can ask you about certain program languages and certifications and stuff like that. But can we have a software engineering discussion? No, not really. So it all boils down to just knowing what you're doing and being technically sound with that area and being able to back up what you put in your resume.
Well, what kind of jobs is Northrop Grumman offering? Are there specific positions that are available so these guys kind of know, what they're looking at?
We literally have everything from janitorial to rocket scientist within
There you
Northrop
go.
Grumman. I mean, there's everything. It's amazing that we have the Sentinel program, which is the new replacement for the Minuteman III missile. It's a huge program. It's
Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
the Sentinel program. We won the contract in 2020, and it was estimated that it was going to be an $85 billion contract. Well, you guys can do the math. You probably saw some of the internet chatter last year because of inflation, uh, increased cost. Our program had to go before the Nunn-McCurdy in the House and Senate for a review because the projected cost overruns exceeded, I think, 20 or 30%. It was more like 40% based on projected growth between the time that the contract was put out for bid and what the reality of today's economy is. So now it's looked at as about 140 billion from start to finish.
Ooh.
So everybody, the government, Northrop Grumman, we have a partnership where they're trying to find ways that we can reduce cost because it passed Nunn-McCurdy. It was deemed mission essential. Those of you that have served in the Air Force and been a missileer, you know that, hey, the Minuteman III is older than I am. I mean, I'm older than dirt. Okay, so it's antiquated. It's still an analog system. The new Sentinel system will be digital. They looked at, okay, maybe we can use the old silos. Well, to retrofit the old silos would cost more money than putting in new silos. So that's the direction that the customer and Northrop Grumman are probably going to go to as we continue on the journey to get the Sentinel operational. We've passed tests that we've had to meet with the government. Some were delayed, some are on target. I think the last thing I saw was they're hoping in 2027 to have the first test flight. So I think President Trump in his first term referred to it as the super duper missile. Okay. And if we deliver, which I think we will, it will be a super duper missile. Okay. And it's a pretty awesome to see everything that we've done with that program as the land leg of the nuclear triad. And then of course, we've got Northrop is building the B-21. We built the B-2 and it's getting pretty old. And so the B-21, the second one, has started test flights. Um, we're always looking for new work, new opportunities to grow. Uh, we do stuff that I don't even have a clue of, you know. And every day that you're on a meeting where we'll have these all hands meetings where they bring in other sectors and other managers and then they talk to us about some of the stuff they're doing. It's remarkable. We've been doing UAVs for years. We've been upgrading technology uh, on aircraft for a long time. Northrop Grumman merged together in like 1994. Before that, they were separate companies. Uh, we've got a lot of heritage programs that go way back. I think there's a story that I think his name Jack Northrop drew the winged aircraft on a cocktail napkin in 1947. And it took him almost 40 years to manufacture it and get it in the air with the B-2.
That's wild.
So yeah, there's a lot of history to the company. Marilyn Monroe actually worked for Northrop back in the day. So, there you can
Yeah.
find all kinds of weird historical stuff like that.
What what's the main areas that they're looking to get people to? Is there any main hubs or is there
Yeah,
remote jobs?
so the headquarters for the Sentinel program is in Roy, Utah. And then we have hubs in Huntsville, Bellevue, Nebraska, Fort Carson, or Colorado Springs, not at Fort Carson, Colorado Springs, Vandenberg, California, Space Force Base. Um, we have a satellite in Redondo Beach or Manhattan Beach, California. Now, when we start the silos and the wings for the Sentinel, we're going to have wings in Cheyenne, Wyoming, F.E. Warren. We're going to have Minot, North Dakota, and Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. And then Palmdale, California is a hot spot for the B-21. The East Coast, you know, we have a lot of work there. Uh, let's see, where else do we have stuff? Oklahoma City, Melbourne, Florida, Mississippi, Luca, Mississippi. We've got a new facility in Rocket Center, West Virginia, that they're always looking for folks. There's Wright Pat in Ohio, almost all of, and then our weapon systems division. Everybody's got work in Huntsville. Huntsville is a growing metropolis for work. It's like the Silicon Valley of the Southeast. And then Northridge, California.
Are
If
they are
you,
they paying for are they compensating for the cost of living of California over there?
yes. And, we call it a geodiff. Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if, let's say that you got an opening in Nebraska and you've got the same opening in California, well, guess what? The pay in California is going to be more than the pay in Nebraska. Okay. Uh, One of the cool things that we started doing, I think it was in 2021, because there's a few states, Colorado being one of them, that companies have to be fully transparent with salary projections. So all of our jobs, regardless of where it's going to be, we will put in the job description, a salary range. And I will tell y'all, we put the minimum and we put the maximum. I've been here 18 plus years now. I've never paid the max. Okay. So when you look at these jobs and a sourcer or recruiter talks to you about your salary expectation, if you go to that job description and if it says, minimum is 100,000 and the maximum is 150,000. Well, guess what? Somewhere in the middle is going to be the market rate for that job. It's not going to be the max. We're not going to pay you the minimum. We're going to be somewhere in that 120 to 125 range.
So it's full transparency, which is really nice to have from a company, especially as large as Northrop Grumman.
Yeah, we've got roughly 100,000 plus employees worldwide. So, we do a monthly mill vet information call. I think this month's it's next Wednesday. And we've been doing that since 2021. You know, we couldn't do job fairs back then, so excuse me. We we put this information session together, and it's remarkable how successful it has been because uh, military and veterans are allowed to ask questions in the chat or over the phone, and we try to answer those questions. And we show them, we give a live demonstration on how to use our system and what to look for. We have a candidate matching tool in the system for military people. You can put your MOS in there, and it'll take keywords from what that MOS job description is, and it'll feed it over and give you some in the ballpark jobs to look at.
That's really cool.
And
Wow.
we've not had too many negative responses, uh, in the feedback that we get from our attendees. And then we've gone through, of course, you know how bean counters are, right? They figure out a way. When we put this together, it was not intended to be something that we could show an ROI, return on investment. We did it as recruiters to save us time because numerous times during each month, we will get LinkedIn messages, we'll get email messages wanting 30 minutes of our time. Well, do the math. If 15, 20 people want 30 minutes of your time, pretty soon that's a lot of time that you really don't have. And when that occurs, then we have to figure out, okay, how can we save some time? So we all made the commitment to dedicate an hour and a half for this info session once a month. And I'll put it in the chat. Somebody put in the chat they want the link to that, and I can do that. It's on our veterans career page. And so it it saves us time in the long run because it takes what 15, 20 seconds to cut and paste an email back to somebody or in LinkedIn, say, hey, go here, register for the next info session. And, then we'll answer most of your questions. And if you still have a question, then we can talk about it during the info session. So, we normally have a military representative from each of our sectors, and then we have 4 sectors plus corporate. And then we'll have sourcing professionals on the call as well. We get a few managers that join the call from time to time. And so these bean counters, they figured out, okay, we can look at who registered for the session, and then we can go to our candidate tracking system and we can see who actually then went and applied to a job. I know then we can see who was hired. Now, that's not recruiters that are doing that. That's management that does that. And they're like, people that attend the session have a higher probability of getting an interview. And oh, yeah, by the way, they have a higher probability of getting a job offer. So it's been very successful. You know, Corporate is like, great idea, guys. I'm glad you did thought of that. Let's not stop. Let's keep doing it. So here it is over 4 years later, we're still doing it.
There you go. That's awesome. I did have a question for you, and then I think there's some people in the audience that also has a few questions. But one of the biggest questions that I had for you is going back to the way you talk about your experience. You talk about it in groups of years, and you have them all broken down into different categories. What's one way someone could take multiple experiences for themselves and break it down For example, I worked on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier and I managed, 200 to 800 people on the flight deck. Like, how do we translate something like that into the correct, you know, way that's appropriate for civilian, recruiters?
Well, do you want to do project management or do you want to get into something else? Did you go back to school to study and to get into something different? That's going to determine where do you really want to go from here. If you want to stay in project management, then you can relate that leadership and management that you did managing all those folks on an aircraft carrier to being able to manage people on a particular program. You know, Early in my career, I was a combat engineer. Okay, and civilian wise, I was a boilermaker. I was a welder. Okay, and then I became a National Guard recruiter. And I'm like, oh, I really like this stuff. I get to be around people and you know it's a glorified sales job when you're a recruiter, okay.
Yeah.
A- and when I was with the Army National Guard, they spent money to send us how to sales training. Yeah, I could go sell cars, I could go sell this, I could sell that, but I like selling opportunities for people to have that next career, and having been in the military, then it's like, okay, this is really the best of both worlds for me, because I get to take care of my brothers and sisters that wore the uniform, and I've made a pretty good living along the way at it.
Nice. That's really awesome. I'm gonna have a couple of guys have a couple questions. So, Aaron, what was
Okay.
your question for Mr. Donnie?
Yeah, Mr. Hash, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, when you're in the site, the candidate site, I just had a question. When the application stage, it's under consideration and then it moves to screening. What exactly does that mean?
That means somebody has actually acknowledged that you applied and that it's being reviewed. Now, I'm trying to think. It once when it's been reviewed, I think then it goes into a hiring manager review. And then from there, the hiring manager has usually 3 days to review it and evaluate your resume. Now, some divisions, we operate in what they call an agile method, meaning if I think you meet the qualifications, I can move you straight to interview. And then it'll show up that you've been moved to interview. Once I move somebody to interview step, then our interview scheduling teams takes over and they will reach out to you to find out your availability for an interview. And so one of the things, and I put in the chat our next enterprise military veteran info session, and that'll get you into the veteran page and all that stuff. But more importantly is when you create a profile on our website, you can get notifications that a new job that has similar skill sets, needs as what you possess based on your resume. And I would recommend that if you go to our website, if you're really searching, and especially a particular area or a particular career field, go there no less than every 5 days. And I say 5 days because we post all of our jobs for a minimum of 5 days. I recently posted a level 1 and level 2 position, and I kid you not, in 7 days, I had 452 candidates. Now, how much time do you think those 452 candidates got from me when I had to review them? Well, I did it, not even 2 or 3 minutes, okay? Maybe 30, 45 seconds.
And that brings up, I kind of have like a two-part question. And with that, like applying through the Northrop Grumman site, that is that getting more preference than per se on Indeed or LinkedIn? Because I'm assuming if there's 400 plus candidates, maybe some of those are coming from some of those outside sources.
No, I mean, it, the only way it's going to be quicker is if you know somebody that works for Northrop Grumman
And
and
that's
you're a referral. Okay.
right,
If you know somebody that works for us, then they can go in and they can submit you as a referred candidate. Now, if they do that, then part of what they're supposed to do is send you a link so that you can apply. If you don't actually apply, it won't be there.
right. I've actually submitted probably 4 or 5 applications with referrals from. I'm here in the local Roy area, retiring out of Hill Air Force Base. So,
Okay. Well,
and
what I would do is, and I'll put my email in the chat, okay? So I would say call me or email me. And if you know the requisition number that you applied to, which
mhm,
when I say that, it's going to start with an R. And when you see the posting, whether it's on LinkedIn or anything else, it'll be an R10, like the new ones are 21 and then another and a 4-digit number.
yep.
Okay. So if I know that, then I can find you much easier, you know, especially if you have a common name, George Jones, there're going to
Yeah.
be 3 or 4 dozen George Joneses in the system. Okay. So, but if you go often and and you build your network, then I can see every requisition that we have in our system except other HR positions. But I know who that recruiter is that can see them. Okay. So if you apply to an HR job, I can reach out to our HR recruiter and I can say, hey, did this person apply? Take a look at it, please. And they will.
And then last, sorry, the rest of the crew. And then last question is when once you like I received a call on one of the jobs. And it is that like the interview process? Do they let you know up front? Because I didn't get a lot of information from the person that called. They just asked me if I was available. I was coming out of a staff meeting. So I said, yeah, I have a couple seconds to just talk to you. But I wasn't prepared kind of with that elevator speech or any 5 stars. So I just kind of candidly like offered my availability. And then they went into questioning of like, how much are you looking to earn and stuff? So it wasn't clearly stated that it was an interview, but it
Yeah,
was,
well, it was probably just more of a sourcing intake call
okay.
than and our sourcers do that. And when you're busy, whether it's you or anybody else on this call, if somebody calls you like that and it's not a good time, just tell them, say, could you please call me back in an hour? Or can you call me back tomorrow at such and such time? Because our sourcers, they're kind of like pesky car salesmen. Okay.
Okay.
They've seen, I don't mean that in a bad way.
No, no.
Okay. They have seen probably either your resume on LinkedIn or some other social media or maybe even the candidate tracking system. And so they think, okay, well, this person is a fit for this job that I'm sourcing for this week. So they're going to reach out and, they don't always call at the most opportune times. Okay. Salespeople always, inevitably they call you when you're at your busiest, especially when you're a passive job seeker. Those that are still working, you know, they pick on us at the worst possible time sometimes, you know. And you just have to say, I'm sorry, but I'm in the middle of something. Can you call me back and give them a time? Then you'll know they're serious if they call you back. Okay.
Yep. All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your answers. I'll yield the floor now.
All right, thank you so much. Hey, Matt Engelhart, you have a question?
I do. I want to start just by saying thank you again for taking the time to come and talk to us today, sir. I do appreciate your time. The question I have for you it might seem odd, but what I'm going to ask is basically do you believe that it is fair for companies like Northrop Grumman or any of the other large defense contractors to advertise positions that they know are going to be available when they know that there are internally people that are going to be displaced or that need to apply for those positions, that they will take care of ahead of time because they're already part of that organization? Or, in a situation like we're in now, where there's a hiring freeze and there's lots of people being laid off or retiring early from federal positions that have experience and have worked with these contracting companies for a long time. I think a lot of us are finding ourselves in the position of just going through the motions of putting in the requisite, hey, here's what we have the ability to do. Here's our experience working with your company. But in reality, the company has already slotted some of these positions for people that they already are, retaining and expect to retain. And there's no way that we can compete with that.
Well,
So, what's the reality of, like, what should we expect to do in these kind of situations?
personally, I think that's wrong. Okay. I'm against, you know, pre-selection. And so, the company has been very good about if we lose a program due to completion or it wasn't, which if it's not a funded program, when we put out a job announcement, it's going to state that it's contingent upon funding. Okay. So, we don't have too many of those with the Sentinel program and with some of the other programs. But if it's new work that we're going after, where the government, the customer has said that they want, we have to submit some of the people that we're going to use in the bid, then you'll see a lot of those. We don't do too many of those with Sentinel, but it does happen. Okay. We have an at-risk list that when we have programs shutting down or going away or whatever, and I will tell you that we had this happen, one of our space system sectors, uh, about a year ago now, we had, I think it was like 300 or 400 people that were going to lose coverage because the work had ended. We didn't have those 300 positions advertised. Internally, we knew that we needed to fill some positions that hadn't been posted yet. So they did internal interviews with these folks, and we actually were able to move them from one program to another. Now, in my opinion, we did the right thing by taking care of proven employees. Okay. We still have been growing and hiring. Most recruiters, they don't like to do that bait and switch type stuff. And, we have an internal promotion mechanism that, if you come into the company today as a level, I'm going to say a level 3, because that's a kind of a mid-level individual contributor role. A year from now, the manager, if you're doing a bang up job, they can submit you for a promotion. You can also, after 6 months, apply internally for promotion opportunities. More than likely, the manager is going to have conversations with you monthly or quarterly, and you're going to know what kind of work you're doing and what the opportunities for growth are and things like that. So, that's how we kind of get around having everybody always trying to get a promotion by applying to a higher level job. And the key there is you have to be in the company 6 months to do that. When it comes to manager roles, when you have a program that grows really fast and you got 100,000 good employees, there's probably more internal selected for manager roles than individual contributor roles when you look at the percentages. Okay. Because even though we know that a lot of people external are fully capable of coming in and being a manager, but we want to give some of our internals some opportunities for management before maybe hiring somebody external, because they've had a chance to see what they can do technically and managerial leadership wise ahead of the game. So if you've been a mid-level manager or a manager in the military and you think, well, that's what I want to be a manager again. When you go to our website, you'll see how many individual contributor roles we have versus how many manager roles we have across the company. And there's a significant difference in the numbers. And, personally, I try not to ever do that. I can't speak for everybody else.
All right. Thanks, Donnie. Next person, Rob, you got a question?
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I have some questions in terms of the application process. There's certain times where it may ask, like, do you give permission for AI to look over this resume, or do you want it to go to a human source? And there's other descriptions of, like, are you a protected vet, etc. And I was just wondering if there's any pros and cons to clicking one box or the other on those from your perspective.
Well, the only time, the AI that we use is primarily to help the candidate. Okay. And that's with, in the in our eightfold candidate tracking. When you go in and first apply, they're going to ask you if you want to be considered for future opportunity. That's when the AI is going to kick in. That's when the AI is going to look at your resume and everything on your resume, and then it'll help match you up to other openings that similar skill sets and qualifications are needed for. Everything that we use AI for, we have to input the data of what we're looking for. Okay, it's not the big AI in the sky that they're doing everything for us. We still look at resumes when they apply, and we still go through each resume or profile to see if you meet the qualification. Do we have some shortcuts? Yeah, we have some shortcuts. We have a series of questions that all military and government employees have to answer, and that weeds a lot of people out. Do you have a current clearance? That's the big one with some of our programs, that the clearance has to be active and it has to be within the last 6 years that it was adjudicated. That's an Air Force rule for the Sentinel program. It's not a rule for every one of our programs.
Speaking of that, Donnie, I just wanted to touch on that just a little
Yeah.
bit when it comes to the security clearance stuff, because for the most part, everyone here has some form of security clearance. But when I'm in the middle, like I'm at the very end of my transition out, but when I was talking to the security manager on my base, they were talking about how it's like active, but it's not. It kind of like turns off or something like that. It just has to be like switched back on by the company or whatever. So can
Okay.
you shed some light on that for everyone here about how exactly that works moving into a company that requires that from us?
Okay, here's how the security clearance works. Let's say that today you're on active duty and you have a top secret clearance. And tomorrow you separate from the military. Okay. Tomorrow, that security manager is supposed to downgrade your top secret to a secret. Why? Because tomorrow you no longer have a need to know. Okay. That secret, then a clock starts ticking. You have 24 months that it's called inactive, but within scope. Okay. So what does that mean? That means that for 24 months, if you apply and are selected for a job with any company that requires a clearance, that when you accept the offer and then our manager goes into DIS or into, we call it SCUS now, and they go in and request a transfer of that clearance. Boom, then it's activated again and it's transferred to that company. So you're splitting hairs when you say, is it active or is it not? Because it's still in scope for 24 months. Now, if you're at the very end of that 24-month window, it may spawn a whole new investigation. Okay. Now, a lot of time, the military was famous for using that, CR, continuous resolution or evaluation or whatever they call it, rather than initiating periodic background or security clearance. I know we don't ask for proof, okay? You can get it and have it on file, but I'm not supposed to collect that, even though I have an active secret clearance. I've had a secret clearance for over 40 years. And so I was in that continuous evaluation until from 2012 until this summer. I got a notice that, hey, you've got to redo this. Well, guess what? In 2012, I put it all in the new online system. Well, our beloved military switched apps. None of the data that I had entered from 2012 into this app transferred to the new app. I'm old. Luckily, I kept a copy of the PDF from the old app that had references, parents, children, all the, dates of birth, places of birth, all that stuff. And it still took me 4 hours to update the new app to keep my clearance active.
That's
So,
wild.
yeah,
Wow.
the more records you keep on yourself, the easier it becomes when you have to submit stuff.
We are wrapping up on time here. I do
Okay.
have three more guys here, Donnie, that have questions. Do you have time to answer them?
Yeah, I got time.
Okay, cool. Brian, what do you got?
Hey, Donnie, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming out. I've been waiting for somebody from Northrop to come out. I wrote down some questions for you. Can you repeat what you said about common names? As you can see from my, name here, I've got one of probably the most common names in America. So,
Well, if I go in and I just search for your name that you have applied, it's going to show me however many of people that have applied that have a similar name. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's why I say when you have applied and if you reach out to me for assistance, let me know what requisition number that you
Oh,
applied
okay.
to. Okay. Now, they will also give you a candidate ID. When you get the automatic reply back that your application has been accepted, it probably will have a copy of, or it'll show like in parentheses, a candidate ID number.
hmm
I can find you with that candidate ID number as well. The likelihood that there would be multiple Brian Smiths apply with the same candidate ID, that's not going to happen unless
Right.
you did it yourself. Okay.
Right. That was my really quick question that I had. Another question is I've got until December 24th is when I start terminal, so that's when I can officially be hired by anyone. So it's still a little ways out, not too far. What is your recommendation for lead times, or is that all dependent upon the position that's being offered?
Well, you're in the window, brother.
Okay.
I mean, apply away. I mean,
Yeah. And I have been.
you're outside of probably being eligible to do a skill bridge, okay?
Right.
But
Well,
you are within the window that if you start terminal leave in December, now we have a holiday shutdown that'll start right around Christmas Eve and run through the new year. But we're all still recruiting, and you could be reviewed, interviewed, and hired with a probable start date of that first or second week of January.
okay. Awesome. I did have one more quick question.
Okay.
In the application process, I don't know what that was. In the application process, after you submit your resume, it asks you to further explain certain skills that the AI keyed on. Is there a method to that madness, or do you just fill out every one of those that you can, like just go for broke? Because what I'm recalling is you saying is, that one job posting that you had 452 people that applied, like you only got 30 seconds, and that's a lot of information.
Oh
So
yeah,
just if you had any information on that.
that's why I use keywords and stuff
Hmm
to sort them out.
Yeah.
Like I can review a, I can hit a button and I can review everybody that's a U.S. citizen. I can review everybody that has this active clearance.
hmm
And those are my two favorite ones to go to because everything I personally recruit for, citizenship and a clearance are required. So I can delete a lot. I can disqualify a lot of people because A, they don't have a clearance. B, they're not a U.S. citizen that applied. You've heard that old saying, just throw it up against the wall and see what sticks.
Every
Well,
day.
some people do that. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's part of the territory, but it helps me, it helps other recruiters that you apply to the jobs that A, you're willing to work for the money that's listed, and B, in the location, and C, that you have the basic requirements. If you don't have the basic requirements, you're not going to get past the gatekeeper, period.
Mhm. Yeah, I noticed that with a few of the applications that I've sent or resumes that I've sent is I'll get a response email from the AI with a rejection notice immediately.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
the AI is good about doing the responses for us, but
Hmm.
yeah, and you know, we just in the SDS, the Sentinel Program Division, we've hired I think 1,200 people so far this year.
Hmm.
So that's just one division. That's not the whole company. I mean, we're hiring all the time. We had 251 starts last month just in this division. That
Hmm.
set a new record. Nobody had ever hired 251 people in a month's time. We've got 193 scheduled to start in October. So we've been going pretty hard and pretty fast.
Yeah.
So
That seems like a really insane rate right now. How long do you think that's actually gonna last? If
okay, so just in our division, we have on average 10 to 15% attrition. Okay, you've been in the military, you heard attrition management talks your whole career, right? So what does that mean? That means we have 5,000 people that are employed today on our division, and we lose 10% of them next year. I mean, day one, starting in 2026, we got to hire at least 500 just to come close to offsetting our losses. That's because, okay, it's competitive market. If you're good, other people want to hire you too. So you may get disgruntled. You may not like your manager. So, okay, I don't like my manager, so I'm going to leave. Or you have to move and you have to relocate. Life happens. You're in the driver's seat after you get out of the military. It's not the military is not going to tell you, oh, you got to go here or you got to go there. You can kind of pick and choose where you go and what you do. So it's just part of the process where we're going to lose folks for one reason or another, and we're going to have to replace them. Now, we're still on a path of continued growth. In 27, you're going to see another big uptick where more of the wings are going to come online, and there's going to be construction and building and everything like that in 27 and beyond for the Sentinel program. If other companies put in orders, which I think there's already an order for 200 B-21s. The main manufacturing facility is in Palmdale. So the second one just started flight. That means we got to build 199 or 198 more. And it takes a while to build that aircraft.
yeah,
So it's going to continue on for a while.
wow,
When you look at the work, look at, and it's okay to ask the recruiter, what's the length of the contract? What's what's it look like for growth? What's it look like for before completion? There's so many things that you can ask, and don't be ashamed to ask questions when if the recruiter or if the sourcer or during the interview. The only thing I wouldn't ask the manager when you get an interview is about salary. They're not supposed to have salary discussions with candidates. Northrop Grumman policy is that's the recruiter's job. Once they say we want this person, then I'm an old school guy. So when I call candidates and say I want to make you an offer, how much do you need? How much do you want to come and join our team? And then I'm going to say, okay, we're in the ballpark, or maybe you've been living in Missouri or Colorado and partaking in some of those illicit recreational drugs or something because we're not on the same program. Okay. So it's very important that you know how much you need to make, how much you want to make, and it's not going to hurt my feelings. If you say, well, I want 200,000, well, I'm going, well, I don't know what you've been doing, but you may be worth 200,000, but I can't pay you 200,000. I'm going to be as transparent as you've ever seen when it comes to salary negotiation. But if you're whatever it says in that job description and announcement for salary range, if you're in the middle, you can't go wrong. And I will tell you straight up, one of the things that I like most about my job is when I talk to somebody and I say, okay, how much money do you need to make? When that person tells me, oh, I got to make 110,000. Okay. So if I offer you 125, that'd make you happy, right? Well, sometimes the ink doesn't even get dry on that offer until it's accepted. So for me, I don't lowball anybody. Okay. I'm gonna pay people what they're worth and what I can pay without kissing babies and shaking hands with HR. All of us in the recruiting world, we know the range that we can operate in based on the program, the way it was bid, all that good stuff. And I have a saying that people work for money. If you want loyalty, buy a dog.
Yeah. That's awesome. Hey, Brian, do you have any more questions for him, or can I move to Mr. Matthew Levitt?
Nope, I'm good. I just want to say thank you again, Donnie, for coming out, and I'm really looking at Northrop Grumman. Really excited to try to get on the team there
You bet.
in Layton. So I definitely expect I'm going to be reaching out to you at some point. So thank you.
All right, guys. Appreciate your time today. Thank you for your service, and reach out to
Donnie,
me.
we still got some questions if you still got some time. If you don't,
I still have a little bit of time if everybody want, try to answer everybody's questions.
Okay. As far as everyone else, I believe you guys have a lunch break, right? I mean, if you guys are willing to stay and hang out for a little bit longer, there's a couple more people with questions if you're interested in staying. But I think you guys got a lunch until the next hour, correct? I'm here if Donnie's here. There goes Brian. All right. Matthew Levitt, go ahead, man. What's your question?
Good morning, Donnie. It's good to see you.
Hey.
I'm a Chief Master Sergeant retiring out of Hill Air Force Base, so looking at getting in with the Sentinel program there in Roy. I've got a lot of friends and mentors in the company already, so I've been talking to them about resume advice. I've been referring jobs to me. I've got an MBA, BS, PMP, TSSCI clearance. I'm currently sitting at 0 for 7 jobs I've applied for, though. I've got 3 pending. I'm kind of wondering if you have any advice for me. Tailored resumes, feel like I'm looking pretty good on that front. Having trouble getting past that initial step, though.
Well, I would say send me an email with the job requisition, and then I'll look it up, see who the recruiter is, and I'll ask for a favor.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then looking at, is it possible to apply for too many things? I've been kind of focused on project management, but a few other things pop up. Okay.
Yeah. I will tell you that it's preparation, dedication, and persistence. It doesn't happen every day where a person applies for one job and is hired for that first one. They better buy a lottery ticket that day, because it's competitive. And, like I said, I had that job recently that there was 452 candidates. I've had other jobs that you would think that you would get a nice collection of candidates that, it wouldn't, I've got one that's been posted 5 days and I have 0 candidates this morning. So you never know, you know.
Which job was that?
It just that's that's life.
That's really cool. Matthew, do you have any other questions for him?
I'm good. Thanks, Donnie.
You bet.
Do we have anyone else with any other questions? I know I saw Dante in here, and Matt Englehart's popping back up too. Dante, are you still here? I know you had some questions for him. If he's not here, that's fine. Matt, what about you, Matt Englehart?
Hey, sorry, I just had one more question, sir. Just on the ethics of when you do apply for a job and you're accepted and you're brought into the interview process, but they know that you are a retiring military person, and they assume basically that, like, oh, okay, well, we're going to use your compensation from retirement from the military as part of our calculus into what we're going to pay you. Um, I mean, we're all here because we need to get jobs, right? Like, we need to find, but like, how do you respectfully say, like, hey, like, that's not your place to get involved with, or
No, I have
what are you
never
risking
done
if
that.
you do that?
Never. It
Okay.
is not in the equation whatsoever. If that job says that it pays minimum 100,000 or maximum 150, nobody should even consider the fact that, okay, well, this guy's a retiree and he's, getting 50% or whatever. No, that is so wrong. Mm-mm. Because
Yeah.
guess what? I'm a retiree. Okay. They didn't do that to me. I'm not going to do it to you guys. And I would, if somebody's ever had a recruiter have that happen to them, then they should tell me. And then I'll put a bug in our director's ear that somebody not being, you know, ethical.
Ethical. Yep, that's the
That,
word,
I mean,
ethical.
we
Yeah.
we we try to be a very ethical company here, and I think we are. Now, there are some bad characters out there, and I know personally I have never done it. I would match my record with the people that I've hired in 18 plus years with anybody's. I don't pay a retiree less money than I pay somebody that's never served. I don't pay them more. I'm
Okay.
going
I
to
guess
pay them a fair market rate that we have agreed to. And that,
my only real concern then, I guess, is if we say that, if we know that that's the truth and that's how it should be, but we say, hey, like, I'm not willing to accept that because my compensation from the military retirement shouldn't be part of the consideration, and then we get rejected, are we putting ourselves at risk for not being hireable because we can put our name in a bad position or a bad place out in that community of hiring for other positions?
see, that's why managers don't have the conversation with the salary conversation with the candidate. That's a recruiter's job. And I wouldn't throw the recruiter under the bus if someone did that. I would pick up the phone and I would call them and I'd say, what the heck are you doing this for? What's the method behind your madness? Because you're not supposed to be doing that. you know None of the people on my team are doing it that I'm aware of. I will tell you all straight up, I've had candidates say, hey, can you pay me more because I don't need the benefit because I'm a retiree? I'm like, no, I can't. Our employees pay for the benefit. It's based on their salary. If you don't want the health insurance, you don't pay for the health insurance. I've been a retiree for almost 20 years. I've never been compensated because I don't need the company's health insurance. I do elect the company dental insurance over the federal employee retiree dental insurance. Why? A, it's better coverage, and B, it's less monthly cost. That's just for me personally. I have vision insurance. It covers my spouse, myself. You know, it's cheap. One trip to the optometrist, I've gotten my premiums back. Now, full disclosure, I'm old, okay? I'm already, and I'm a disabled veteran. So I get some VA compensation. I can get everything I need from the VA. I haven't seen a civilian doctor since before COVID. 3 years ago, I had to have bypass surgery. The VA sent me out on the economy. They did my bypass. I paid zero. They didn't even ask if I had other insurance. I had TRICARE. They didn't care. The VA sent me over. It's covered, everything. So, very important that you go through the process, get evaluated as you get out of the military or retire from the military. And if you're entitled to some VA service connected disabilities, make sure you do it. We have an Operation Impact program that gives you that veteran preference points, if you will, that if you get or expect to get 30% or more, then you'll be able to sign up for our Operation Impact program. You can read all about it on the website.
All right. Thanks again, sir. I appreciate it. Great answer.
Hey, that was awesome, Donnie. Thank you so much for coming on here and just sharing everything with us, all the information. You guys go ahead and throw one in the chat if you guys want to hear from Donnie again. Let's see all of that. If you guys need any, he put his email in there. I think his email was put in there a few times. His LinkedIn has been put in there. Connect with them. Find out, what helps. Look at all those ones. Look at. Just killing it, Donnie. Oh man, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you guys that you guys got to talk to Donnie here. If you have anything else, feel free to reach out. If not, make sure you guys are back here 1400 Eastern for your next class. I try and get here a couple minutes early. Other than that, Donnie, have a good one, man. Thank you so much.